Waivers aren't always about someone who had a good weekend. Sometimes it's about players who are going to be getting opportunities in the upcoming weeks. And in week 12, that is no exception. If you're trying to ensure your running back backfield, if you have Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, or Trey Benson, this is the week to grab your guys. They're still highly available. I've got Kenneth Gainwell and Bashaw Tutin not on this list this week. It's worth mentioning that Jaylen Warren did say he could go back into the game, but the Steelers were just up multiple scores. And Bashaw Tutin could very well make this list over Bam Knight if you just don't want a muddy backfield. Just because they're not listed in the top 5 does not mean that they shouldn't be picked up. Well, let's go ahead and start it off with Emmanuel Wilson. He is the clear handcuff. Josh Jacobs, who was banged up in week 11. Now, he's been very good on his limited opportunities. The only question mark we have about Emmanuel Wilson is how much are they going to deploy Marshawn Lloyd, second-year running back, if he does make it onto the field. And Chris Rodriguez, Commanders running back, he's been the one you've wanted for the Commanders, not been Ja'Cory Cross-Chimera. If you want to go ahead and boot him off to waivers as like a sabotage drop, you can go ahead and do that. It's a longer-term play than some of these other handcuffs if you do pick up Rodriguez. Don Tucker, now he did the best out of everybody you'll see on this entire waiver wire. He was the running back 1 on the week. He had 140 scrimmage yards for 3 touchdowns. We saw the same type of dominant performance last season in week 6. He followed up his 30-point game with a 4-point performance, and they really never gave him the rock significantly again. Now, you can spot start him if Bucky Irving is still out, but it is against the Rams, who have allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running back this season. So do keep that in mind if you do start him. Devin Singletary, he's another long-term play like Chris Rodriguez. Both Singletary and Tyrone Tracy did great in week 12. Now, it seems both are getting used a lot. Now, Tyrone Tracy is the running back I will be more confident in, but it is worth noting that since week 9, after Cam Skadaboo's injury, Singletary has 10 carries inside of the 10-yard line, while Tracy has 0. So Singletary is clearly the goal line back. And now, Bam Knight, he's the last one here. Amari DiMercado, I liked him the most out of everybody because he was doing very well with limited opportunities. Now, he had 8 opportunities before he exited the game very, very early in the game. And he's most likely out in week 12 because he does have a high ankle sprain. Now, both Michael Carter and Bam Knight had 9 opportunities in week 11. Knight found the end zone, so he was the one you were happier with. Now, there's a little bit of a theme here. You can see it's a very muddy backfield, and Trey Benson might come back in week 12. Now let's go ahead and talk about wide receivers. Starting it off with Alec Pierce. He's available in about half of leagues, and since week 7, he's been the wide receiver 12. So it's kind of a no-brainer that you should be picking him up. Now let's talk about the man of the hour, Michael Wilson. Let's talk about doing the most with the limited opportunities that you had. He has the most receiving yards in a game this season with 185. He had 15 catches. I think he's playable even if Marvin Harrison Jr. is back in the lineup, but obviously we'd want Marv to miss, so we'd be a little bit more confident in the play. But Michael Wilson, round of applause. Kudos to everybody that did play him. And Christian Watson, he's still not getting a ton of volume, but he finally came down with some of those end zone targets. He's had over 40 receiving yards as well in each of his 4 starts, so his floor is actually not too bad. Darius Slayton, he was emerging as another solid option for the Giants pass catchers when Jackson Dart was in there. Now, he missed week 11 with a hamstring injury, so you got to double check and see what his status is this week, but he has been a fine, reliable option for the Giants offense. And then Darnell Mooney. There are 2 things that we know. Michael Penix is out for the season, and Drake London will miss week 12. Kirk Cousins and Mooney, they played together in 2024, where Mooney had 6 games out of his 14 games with Kirk Cousins as a wide receiver 20 or better. So almost half his games, he was super reliable for your fantasy rosters. He could be higher on this list if we knew more about how long Drake London would be out. Now let's talk about some tight ends. I don't have him listed here, but if he is available in your league, he's only available about a quarter of leagues. But Hunter Henry, he gets to play the Cincinnati Bengals. They are by far the worst team against tight ends. So he would be a smash top 12 play this week if he's available. But let's go to some guys that are more highly rosterable. Juwan Jennings, he was dropped because of the bye. He had an awesome game with Tyler Shuck before, and his opportunities have gone up. Colston Loveland, you're hoping for more upside, but he's finally playing a full allotment of snaps. He is a stash. He's not a must start, but it's nice that he plays the Steelers this week, who allow the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends. And A.J. Barner, second-year tight end, coming off a career high in targets and receptions. He's worth a stash and see approach because if he does play or do something relevant over these next couple games, he has the 6th easiest playoff schedule for tight ends. And the last two guys, they're on IR. Brenton Strange is almost certainly coming back during the regular season. It's not 100% sure on Darren Waller, but either way, both guys were pretty dominant before their injury, Waller more so, but they could come back into the lineup as a primary target, and their playoff schedules almost couldn't be easier. Now let's go ahead and talk about some quarterbacks. Jacoby Brissett versus the Jags. Now, if you ask Justin Herbert, he would say that this is a very good defense. The Jags have actually allowed the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. They're very good at turnovers. They're second best in the entire NFL, but it doesn't mean you cannot throw on them. Brissett has been one of the most consistent quarterbacks since he took over in Week 6. He's 4th in points per game during that time frame, and he's had 2 touchdowns and 250 or more yards in every single week. Now, after Brissett, I will say that the quarterbacks, they're kind of sickening, so feel free to skip along if you've already ate today. Joe Flacco versus the Patriots. Patriots are beatable through the air. I can't imagine losing Jamar Chase helps out Joe Flacco, so that's why I'm not nearly as confident, especially after failing us against the Steelers just last week. And Sam Darnold versus the Titans. Now, the Rams are officially not just a run-stopping defense. They're stopping some of the pass as well. Probably the most complete team in the entire NFL. Now, the Titans, they are not. They are a much easier matchup. Now, it does feel bad to play Sam Darnold after 2 horrible games. One of those not being his fault. The game just got out of control. They didn't really need to throw the ball at all. But this most recent one, he was seeing ghost again. And Bryce Young versus San Francisco 49ers. Now, here are the facts. Bryce Young just threw for 450 yards and 3 touchdowns. Brissett just threw for 450 yards and 2 touchdowns against the 49ers. And then in super deep, super flex leagues, Aaron Rodgers might not be good to go this weekend. I'm seeing conflicting reports, but Mason Rudolph versus the Bears, it could be worse. Bears allow the 6th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, so if you're in a super deep league, Mason Rudolph could be your guy. And let's wrap it up with some streaming defenses, starting off with the Falcons versus the Saints. Now, I thought the Falcons were going to be a smash play versus, but we just talked about Bryce Young and how he did on Sunday. So, against rookie quarterback Tyler Shuck, I'm willing to go right back to them, but do temper your expectations because they might not be as good as we want them to be. And now the Browns and the Raiders. Not Browns versus the Raiders. I like both sides of the ball here. I do like the Browns much better. They are a much better defense. They get to play Geno and their lackluster offense. But the Raiders versus Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel, and the Bears versus the Steelers. I love it a lot more if Mason Rudolph does suit up, but the Bears are still number 1 in takeaways per game. And the Rams versus the Bucks. I just talked about the Rams when I talked about Sam Darnold, but I do think they are the most complete team and probably the most complete defense. And last but not least, the Jags versus the Cardinals. Now, again, I do love Jacoby Brissett. He's been awesome so far since he's been starting this season, but the Jags are still 2nd in turnovers per game, and they completely shut down the Chargers offense. Now, if you like this and you want to see more, go ahead, click the link in my bio. I've got my rest of season rankings. I'll also have my Week 12 rankings there as well by the end of Tuesday. Click subscribe and turn on notifications, and you'll see when I go live, which I go live each and every single day.